Hello and welcome to Old Tunes, Fresh Takes, the podcast where we learn old tunes, record fresh takes of them and encourage you to do the same.
This is for musicians of all styles and abilities. If you play a bit of ukulele, can make a beat on your laptop, or just fancy having a sing, we want to hear from you. We don't care if your version is recorded on your phone or in Abbey Road, we want to hear it.
And you certainly don't have to consider yourself a folk musician. We're especially keen to hear from people who could change these songs into something completely different, an entirely fresh take.
If you want to take part, go and check out our Facebook, Twitter and SoundCloud pages to find a full list of songs we'll be working on this series, including scores, chord sheets and a few versions we like. Links to these can be found in the description of this episode. Remember to follow, like and subscribe so you can stay up to date with everything that's going on.
We always reply to messages and are really keen to make this as easy as possible for you to submit. So whatever stage you're at, get in touch and we'll be happy to provide feedback and advice.
This month's contributors include Ian Jackson, Stuart Clark, Asymptototes, Catapholc, Pomegranate Jones, Cerys Hafana, Rob Semp, Captain Skiffle and John Don Paiva. We'll be playing a clip from each as we discuss them. If you'd like to listen along to the full takes with us, there's a link to the playlist in the description to this episode.
I'm Tim Woodson.
And I'm Jack the Robot.
And this month we're looking at the Bitter Withy.
So, we spent the last month looking at the Bitter Withy. I just wanted to, before we start talking about what we did with it, talk about, there's a couple of things I thought over the last month. The day after we released the podcast, it did occur to me that this story is very similar to The Cruel Mother in a lot of ways, in that we've got our protagonist killing 3 children.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I hadn't really spotted that, but you're right.
Yeah, it's funny, and I guess I was sort of thinking about how it's different because it is approached totally differently as a subject, and I guess there's an implication that they're getting what's coming to them to a certain extent because they're making classist remarks.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah,
I think that's why it's acceptable. Whereas the cruel mother is killing 3 innocent children
who haven't got a chance to do anything good or bad.
Yeah,
it's very much about their innocence. That's what makes it so horrifying, isn't it?
I just thought that was interesting to mention that it's the same narrative point, but it's dealt with entirely differently. And interesting that we haven't. Well, Jesus isn't demonized in the song.
Not really, no. It's very neutral. I mean, like the whole thing is it's about his punishment for it, but it's not like it's disproportionate. We would say to the crime.
Yeah, totally disproportionate.
He had way more coming to him. Yeah.
Yeah, the cruel mother is getting 7 long years.
Yeah,
Christ gets whipped with 3 lashes with a tree branch.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I think under Roman rule, he would have definitely got more than that.
Yeah, lost a hand or
at the least. Yeah. Probably he would have been crucified much earlier. Anyway, I got to think though. I got to congratulate you though, because considering that you picked a tune that you were just looking for a verse.
Yeah,
you've actually picked a tune that's problematic for for people of faith and people not of faith as well. So well done on that.
I mean, I'm interested in the uptake we've had on it because I did have a couple of people saying they didn't want to do it because it was a Christian song. I suppose that's fair enough. But I can't imagine everyone who's got back to us is a Christian. I mean, I'm not a Christian. I think it's a song of interest anyway, and it's interesting how people have dealt with that. Anyway, we'll get to that later.
Yeah, I mean, as a contemporary Christian, I think it's not one that I would be. Well, it's I'm trying hard to not just say that I don't think it counts, but basically, yeah.
I mean, it's a folk song, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's a Christianity of its time.
Yeah, it would make more sense to me if we were talking about like a witch or a warlock or something.
Yeah.
That would ring true for me. That especially if it's like the folk tale of how the Withy becomes as it is, and I guess that's why they're using Jesus and not just a young boy because it needs to be someone who's got some mystical power. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned in the last one that a quote that it may have some sort of Celtic roots.
Yeah, Celtic or Oriental.
Yeah.
Apparently.
So there's obviously they've bolted on a to them contemporary character onto a existing story potentially, and that's I find it really fascinating as a sort of relic of that era.
Yeah. Cool, so I've chosen this month's song, so do you want to talk about what you did with it?
Yeah, sure. So if you remember in the last podcast, I found this song, and certainly your rendition of it in the podcast, to be quite a twee one. So I thought the first thing I wanted to do was to try and make it a bit more palatable to my taste. And so I just set about learning it, played it around a few times. What I discovered I liked about it actually is that it's quite rhythmic in the melody line. So it's like bitter withy, the bitter with, and I thought that kind of got in my head a little bit.
Right.
It's something about that phrase, isn't it? So I started off with that really, just running that round a few times. And once I'd got the melody in my head, I thought, well, this needs to be made minor, really. This needs to be taken out of its kind of twee major key. So I started off with the bass line, actually.
Right.
So I've got this, running the whole way through, I've got this this kind of 2-note bass motif. Then I put a bit of a drum beat together for it, which is based on basically just a kick going all the way through.
Yeah.
And then I had a kind of washed out kind of guitar sound, just taking the upper register. So there's still quite a lot of space in the middle.
Yeah.
And I think what I thought was I really want my voice front and center of this, not because I'm particularly in love with my voice, but I just thought...
Classic ego.
Absolutely. That's why you get into, folk music, isn't it? So I wanted to have my voice nice and strong there in the center. And yeah, I just kind of ran the tune through a few times, just singing through the melody with that same pattern going through. And so what came out for me is there's a kind of natural build to the point where he kind of takes these lads off and drowns them. And then I want to have a little bit of a break there.
Yeah.
Before it comes in, you get the second half of the tale where the mums of the kids go and grass on him to his mother.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, it was all about trying to use the arrangement to underscore that.
Right.
One of the things I have done with the lyrics is I've anonymized the characters because I feel like it wasn't important to me that this kid was our Lord and Savior.
Right. Okay, that's interesting.
So I just felt like the easiest, simplest thing is just make it the boy and his mother.
Yeah.
And people can infer what they like from it.
Right.
But to me the important thing was this story that of this kid who's kind of going a little off the rails and his mother's kind of being forced to defend him and forced to reprimand him for it, because that's what it all comes to, isn't it? The last verse that you played, the Bitter Withy. I mean, am I right that this is potentially a sort of folk explanation of why the willow tree might die the way it does?
That's what you suggested at the end of the last episode. I'm happy to go along with that. I don't.
Great. It sounds legitimate, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I feel happy with that as a reason to have a tune. So, so that's really where I went with it. One of the things I did, which I think you remarked on, was that I wanted to have. One thing I found is that the guitar, partly because my timekeeping's really poor, and partly because the amount of delay I'd put on it, the guitar didn't have much rhythm to it. So what I did is I got it to feed off the kick drum, so it would kind of dip and rise as the kick went in, and just kind of gave a little bit more rhythm to it. This lilting thing. This
is sidechain compression. So basically, sidechain compression. You're ducking the volume of the guitar whenever the kick drum plays, and it's a really commonly used technique in modern music, and it's great. It's a great technique, and I think it works really well here. You just got that breathe. It's always described as a breathing effect, like the guitar sort of breathes in between the kick drums. I think it's lovely.
Yeah, and then the last thing I thought would be really nice with this, partly because the vibe is nice, but one of the things I thought was if I was to send this over a couple of measures to a friend of mine who plays a bit of trumpet. And get her to record a few versions of this, then I can kind of piece together one take. In the end, I just spliced a load of her takes over the top of each other because I thought they actually fit together quite nicely, and they kind of break down really nicely in combination towards the end of it. So I think it's come together quite nicely. One of the things I did, issues I did have is we mentioned in the last episode, I'm using the light version of Ableton, which only gives you 8 tracks. To play with, and so 4 trumpets takes up 4 tracks of that. So I had to actually build that on a separate file, and then splice that in so I could just take up 1 track. So it's a little bit labor intensive.
Yeah, well, that's how they used to do it, isn't it? When all you had was an 8-track recorder, you had to bounce it down to 1 file. And in the recent past, when computers weren't strong enough to handle more than a few tracks, you had to bounce it down. It's only very recently that we've been able to do these huge multi-track.
Yeah, well, that's it. Authenticity is what I'm going for.
Yeah, historical accuracy.
Absolutely,
always. Yeah. Yeah, I really like the trumpets, and I really like the way they're layered, and that it leads to something that isn't totally a clear ending.
Yeah,
the guitar has that delay on it for that last note, and the bass just sort of slides off. It doesn't land on the root note.
Yeah, I really like that it finishes on that slide. Actually, that's quite nice.
Yeah. The percussion. Let's talk about the percussion, because you're setting into a groove here. aren't you?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's very groove led. Yeah,
and also it's similar stylistically to what you did with Cruel Mother.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I've tried to make it sufficiently different, but I like the percussion. The percussion for me is this kind of, it sets this kind of slightly off kilter. It's like the same pattern, but like off kilter each bar. It's simple, but it's enough to make you kind of snap up. And I've used it's like a bit reduction patch on Ableton, and what that does is it kind of, it gives it that kind of crispy, indistinct kind of feedbacky quality, which I kind of loosen it up a little bit as the track goes on. So when it comes into like a bit later on, it's a little bit clearer, and it's a little bit more of a hit. But I really like that sort of sound of like almost like crisp packet kind of percussion.
Yeah, no, it works really well. The other thing I like about it is it feels like the sort of percussion that would work wherever you shifted it within the bar, actually.
Yeah, sure.
So tell us about the Easter egg. Or do you want me to talk about the Easter egg?
Do you want to tell me about how you came across the Easter egg?
So I did a little bit of mixing on this track. You sent me the stems, and I had a little brush up of them. And I just realised at one point that the bass goes out of time with the kick drum. And then I spoke to you about it, and you said, yeah, I think I'm leaning into it a bit more. I was saying, no, there's something going on here. So, and I zoomed in on the waveforms, and I was just thought, okay, I'm going to find where it goes out of time, and I'm just going to move the bass so that it lines up with the kick drum.
Yeah.
And then I played it back, and then it was something like it missed a beat. And I was telling you about this, and then you went back into the file and you found
I'd somehow managed to shift the bass drum, which is just a bass drum, 4 on the floor going all the way through. Just managed to shift a little bit of it by a fraction of a beat.
Yeah.
And it was enough to give it, but I'd not noticed. It's the embarrassing thing.
But anyway, there were two solutions to what to do with that. From my end, there were two solutions. I thought, okay, so my first idea was to shift the bass on with the kick, and actually it misses a beat, or I could shift the kick then back so that it's on time with the bass, and then that would have worked all through the track. And actually, I thought, I'm going to shift the bass and it's going to miss a beat, and most people won't notice, but if you're tapping your foot to it, there'll be a point towards the end where it all just misses a beat, and you'll probably think, oh, I must have heard wrong, and then move on.
Yeah.
But there'll just be a little sort of psychoacoustic trick there, and what I like about that is I've only shifted those two tracks, and all the other tracks stay as they are, which highlights this fact that the percussion really works whatever beat of the bar it's on. It's a nice just rolling pattern that will work wherever you put it. The trumpets aren't affected by it. The guitar isn't majorly affected by it. Or maybe I've not listened closely enough to realise it.
No, it's not. I don't think. Yeah.
So there you go, Easter egg in that track. But again, it's like it's one of these accidents that actually it yielded a really interesting result that I think it improves it.
Oh, maiden fair, call home your child, 'cause ours are drowning. Oh, so the maiden fair called home a child, laid him across her knee. With a handful of the bitter withy, she gave him lashes 3. Oh, the bitter withy that causes me to smile. Well, the withy shall be the very first tree that shall perish at the heart.
Okay, I'm really looking forward to this. Do you want to tell us about your version?
Yeah. I had a lot of fun doing this. Like I said in the last episode, I'd started working on this before we'd even suggested doing this project, because I'd already been having this idea about sort of updating folk songs. This is one that I'd latched onto. Obviously, I'd latched onto it with virtually no knowledge of it. And I'd even misread the lyrics. I quite clearly say, "Thou caused me to start," and it's smart. I mean, I think I just assumed that it was about being scared by the withy. I just hadn't read the lyrics. This is terrible disrespect. I probably shouldn't be broadcasting this fact.
That's fine. We're not overly reverent here.
So when I first looked at this verse, I hadn't looked at the melody. Like I said, I'd barely read the lyrics. And this is how it went when I first put a melody to the words. It went, the withy, the bitter withy, thou caused me to start. to stars. And round like that.
That's lovely.
It is lovely,
Yeah.
which is why I changed it. Yeah, I mean, it is quite nice, but I couldn't really think about, I don't know, I just wanted to put it in a minor key, you know.
Yeah. I'm glad you did, though, because what you've done is chilling.
Good, that's a good thing to hear. Yeah. That's the thing, is that major key stuff doesn't really suit my style. So I literally went to the relative minor, and then I was playing it on guitar just with 2 chords. The withy, the withy, the bitter withy. And that's a C sharp minor, and then it's like an E flat diminished.
Yeah.
And then when I put it in the computer, I recorded those couple of guitar chords in, but quite quickly then, once I put a bass and the organ in, which is very buried, so you might not be able to hear it at this point, but it's the sort of thing you'd notice if it was missing.
Right, yeah.
Then it just wanted those 2 extra chords, so it climbed even further.
It's
up through those.
it's really nice, actually. It's like, it gives you the impression of it sort of, it's already quite heavy, the chords that you've got and the way you've kind of densely packed it, and then when it rises, it's almost like a slight lift, but it's still kind of,
Yeah.
I find the over impression is it's quite a crushing feeling listening to it. And then and what's really lovely is when you have that sort of just like very naked guitar intro, and then it very quickly and out of nowhere kind of hits you with this full like massive sound.
Yeah, I think that must have been a mistake I made, because I'm sure I probably wanted the guitar to play chord A, chord B, chord A, chord B, and then it comes in. But actually you get it halfway through those sort of set of chords, which I think it must be an accident, but obviously I stuck with it because, it's slightly less expected because it doesn't happen sort of at the end of a phrase. It happens halfway through. When we decided that we were going to do this, that's where I had it up to, is I had that melody, the 4 chords, an organ part, and probably a basic vocal harmony.
Yeah.
The organ, by the way, is the Leeds Town Hall organ, which is available free as a free virtual instrument. It'll work with Ableton. I think it'll work as a standalone. It'll work with whatever software you're using, and it's just brilliant. And I use it on so many things. It comes with like 8 presets, so you can have very soft organs, you can have very loud organs. But the Leeds Town Hall organ I can't believe it's such a good resource, and they're just giving it away. It's brilliant. Yeah, so then and actually I did know before we started talking about it that what I wanted to do was drop it down just to a bass line, or like really drop everything out and try and create a more empty space rather than this very full space. The inspiration for that, which is something I always use as a reference point for doing that sort of thing, and I'm always trying to emulate, it's a track called Wolves by Kanye West. My hero. You know, if you go and listen to Wolves, this whole song, nearly all the way through the song, all that's playing is a bass line. The way he keeps it engaging and emotionally impactful all the way through with just that bass line and just different vocalists. I mean, that's courage. So for me, that's like a golden standard of how to do stripped back music.
Right. So, Jack, tell me about the structure, because this was something that you kind of went back and forth on.
Yeah, okay. So this is interesting, actually. For me, this was a real learning exercise. And it makes me wonder if I thought in this way with other tracks, whether I'd be making more progress. Anyway, so I got to a point with the track where I was just racking my brains. And the structure I had in place, which is different from the structure it ended up being, was, we'll call it a chorus when I'm singing. So it was sort of a chorus, a guitar solo, a chorus, and then the drop down and instrumental, which slowly builds up to a final instrumental. And I wasn't bringing the singing back in at the end. And I wanted it to go out on an instrumental. That felt important to me. And I, in a way, I didn't want to bring the singing back in because, I like working with different structures. I like experimenting with that sort of thing. But I was racking my brains, and I started to get this inkling of, we need the singing to come back in.
Yeah.
And then I started thinking, if I bring the singing back in at the end, and actually even if I don't, is it too much to just have those two choruses right next to each other at the beginning, separated only by a guitar solo? Is it a bit like, oh yeah, here's this again? I thought maybe it would be better in the structure that it now is in, and I messaged you and sent you a version of this song, and you said, have you tried restructuring it to this? And I thought, oh yeah, no, that is exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah. So the issue I think you were having is it's a problem with, have you heard that track Spaceman by Babylon Zoo?
I always wanted you
Exactly.
to go.
It's a real issue with it because it starts off at this like really pumped up, really high, and then it gets to like 45 seconds in and it just crashes, and then it carries on for another 5 minutes.
Right.
And it's a real issue. I don't know how they came up with it, because you've got everyone on this real high, and then you've just got this absolute dirge for the rest of it. And I think it's a real problem with structure, because what we like is we like things to build to something.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to subvert that structure, you need to find a way of keeping the interest and keeping something in there so that you don't lose the energy and people sort of tail off. And I think that's the issue you were having with it. What you had was great, but it just lacked that thing to really, that sort of narrative to engage with.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of the work I've done, and I think it's the natural inclination is to have it build towards something, but then I often feel like people can be listening for a minute or two before it's sort of grabbed their ear, and so I thought this one, I just want it to grab them right at the beginning. I want people to be listening for 10 to 20 seconds and then bam, they've got it. In fact, less, I think, in this
And
case.
if you're a digital marketer, that's a very smart strategy.
Yeah.
What I really like is the way that it develops when it comes back again. When you finish that second chorus, it comes in with a big trap beat.
Yeah, I didn't want to say trap beat, but you're totally right. Yeah, I should give credit, because it is 100% a trap beat. I think the interesting thing is it's at 140 BPM. That is that music, but it is in 3/4. So we're used to hearing that sort of music in 4/4. So the snare, particularly, I had to spend a little time wrangling with the snare, trying to capture those beats, but also keep it in 3/4, which is unusual. But
it's a waltz, isn't it? It hadn't occurred to me, but it's a waltz.
It is.
Yeah. That's brilliant, actually. So actually, I think you've really gone back to that form, actually, the sort of the original dance form. That what you've done with the structure is actually not too far off that.
Yeah. I think it's interesting with that learning point from the structure about actually you've got to have something that you're leading towards. I think that's so transferable, whatever medium you're working on, whether you're producing a track or you're just playing acoustic guitar, or you're hitting a string that's attached to a side of a building, whatever. It's about storytelling. And I think, again, this is a reason I'm really interested in working with these folk songs.
Absolutely.
Because you've got to tell a story. Even if, like I have done, you don't really know what the story is, and you've still got to tell a story. You've got to, because no one's going to be interested if you don't have a conclusion, a sort of intro, a development, and a conclusion. We're going to be listening to some versions submitted by listeners now. We'll play a clip of each after we've talked about them, but if you want to listen along and hear the full versions, there's a link to the playlist in the description of this episode. We've had some amazing submissions, so we really do recommend you do this. So, Stuart Clark's is the first one we're going to talk about.
Yeah, it's really interesting, this one, isn't it? It's very jazzy.
Yeah. The jazziest thing we've had so far.
Totally.
But I really like that. Harmonically dense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had this one in my head quite a bit. And I'm not quite sure why, but it's sort of deceptively light.
Yeah. I like that turnaround at the end of the phrase. It's that's not how
It's
it goes.
nowhere near. Yeah.
But yeah, really nice melodic turnaround there. Yeah, and so the instrumentation is lovely. I love the double bass, and my favourite parts of this are when the double bass is at the fore. I don't know whether it's a real double bass or.
It sounds pretty good, doesn't it? If it's not, it sounds pretty authentic.
Yeah, pretty well worked with. I'd be interested to know if it's not, then what plugin he's using or something like that. Maybe he'll share that with us later on.
Yeah, and it's using those nice sort of tritone intervals. So ba-na-na-na-na.
Yeah,
that kind of thing. Yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah, sections where it uses the bass to sort of fall down chromatically, particularly at the end of phrases again.
Yeah.
So turnarounds are some of my favourite parts of this track.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were saying, I was asking Stuart what he'd done with it, and he was saying that he's put the melody line from the sheet that we provided is in. You can hear it if you listen out in the it's in the top line of the chords.
Yeah, not instantly recognisable, but
I think it's got a real nice vibe to it, and like I say, deceptively light. I think if we were sort of thinking about how much jollity they've tried to incorporate into the arrangement, this has got some of it in there, but you do get a sense that there's something else going on.
Yeah. Oh, as for the turnarounds, I've just read that he said towards the end of each phrase you get chromatically descending quartal chords. I had to look up what a quartal chord was. But cool.
For those at home, it's chords based on fourths, intervals of fourths.
Right, yeah, okay.
There you go.
I'd already forgotten. The drums are a loop that he's chopped up. It's not. He's not programmed the drums in, but he's also not played a live track all the way through. He's chopped up a smaller bit of audio.
Right, yeah. But it all hangs together really nicely. It sounds like it could have been, it could have been played by a band. There's no. It's quite natural sounding, I think.
Lovely. Great, so Ian Jackson, I'm really glad he got involved because I was pushing him to last episode. He actually said to me he wasn't sure how well he'd get on because he's not used to sort of writing to a brief, but actually he figured it out quite easily in the end, he said.
Yeah, and what he's done is he's kind of gone and done his own thing, really.
Yeah.
He's reworked the words, he's reworked the tune. We're not sure if he's used a different tune, but he's basically gone and done his own thing. And again, what he's done is really, really effective, really simple, really beautiful melody, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, really nice. He said he's tried to give it a more modern feel, and obviously with the chorus, which is something that came up last episode. A lot of these folk songs, strophic form, verse after verse, and a lot of people will want to put a chorus in, of course. And lovely melody, and really nice sounding guitar again. Again, he's got a really bright guitar. I don't know if it's the same guitar as he used in the last one, but really nice sound on it.
Yeah.
And catchy chorus.
Yeah, it is, isn't
Johnny, you're a wicked boy, Daddy. It's like a hoedown song.
Yeah.
I could imagine sort of dancing to it in a barn somewhere or a village hall or something.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think he's made elements of the story more explicit as well.
Yeah, although he's taken them to a well. He's not drowning them in the sea.
Sure. Yeah.
Interesting. And the mother actually takes him to the well and makes him face the well where he's done this crime, which I think is cool. And again, it's like it's a dark material, but he's put a very jolly tune on it, which it is in the tradition, really.
Yeah.
As we're discovering.
Debatably, do you think his tune is jollier?
Yeah, it almost is.
Not that you can quantify jollity, but I think it is. Somehow.
Yeah, I really like it. I'd like to hear a full band playing. I'd really like to hear like an accordion and.
You can definitely hear it at that sort of down the pub on a Friday night.
Yeah.
She took little Johnny up to the well to see, and she gave him 3 lashes with a bitter withy. Johnny, you're a wicked boy, are thee, to entice these lovely boys down to the willow tree. Johnny, you're a wicked boy.
Cool. So Asymptototes has sent in a version as well. Firstly, I think we should also comment that the standard of artwork for these tracks is it's pretty high.
Yeah, it's an unexpected bonus. It's brilliant. And I really like how Asymptotes has gone with a thematic style of artwork, which links in with other tracks they've done which aren't part of the podcast as well. It's really looks nice.
Other contributors have also gone out and on their artwork as well, and especially trying to sort of represent this concept visually as well as audibly. So just a general well done to everyone.
Yeah.
If that's not condescending.
Another note on the presentation of Asymptotes' track is the lyric they've chosen for the description of the track. I'll make you believe at the very end that I am above you all, which is there in the original lyrics, and I'd sort of skipped over it, but having it isolated like that was like, oh yeah, that's quite a dark lyric. That
Yeah.
that's like a vengeful Christ.
Yeah, and I think, and then when you look at the arrangement itself, you described it as a chiptune aesthetic.
Well, they described it as a chiptune aesthetic. When they sent it in, they said, I was listening to it with a basic Ableton analog square wave, and it sounded great, so I just went full chiptune, and it's cool.
So the thing that stood out to me with this track is, like, I think the arrangement of it, because it's all instrumental and the melody is pretty solid throughout, but that's the main theme. I think the way that they have developed this melody as it's gone out, that's the basis of it. There's essentially 3 parts to it. It's a 3 sort of part structure, and each one there's something different done to that melodic line. So I either sped it up or slowed it down, but all around it you've got this sort of clattering percussion.
Yeah.
Which you never quite find your feet with it, and it's really, I think it's great when you go back to that line that you talked about that's in the description. This sort of disorienting, you've got this really high energy melody going, and then all around it is this sort of disorientating percussion that never lets you really sit where you are.
Emphasised by the fact that it's in 7/4 as well.
Yeah.
I'm quite sure where you're tapping your foot again.
Yeah. But you can tap your foot to it. That's the thing. I always find myself nodding along to this one.
Yeah. So, catapholc.
Yeah, catapholc. This is a sort of drone guitar arrangement.
Yeah.
And I think this is a masterclass in how you can draw out 8 bars worth of music over nearly 5 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when I listened through, I was trying to like get the melody. What I think happens with this, which is in no way a bad thing, is that with this style, the melody, you sort of lose the association between the notes, so it kind of takes on a different form. I went and listened to it with the actual sheet in front of me, and you can see that what they're doing is taking the melody and just basically just letting it sit for as long as possible, drawing the notes out. I really like this style of music anyway.
Yeah. Inspired partly by the Kimberley's version, which uses a Shruti box to create a drone. I mean, it doesn't sound a lot like that. Obviously, catapholc has heard this version and realised that this drone sort of thing works.
Yeah, this melody does lend itself to having a drone underneath it.
Yeah.
I have been meaning to try one with a drone, but I've not quite got around to it yet. But I think often that's the way that's one way you can make things sound hip.
Yeah.
Just an instant hip.
Yeah. Well, they said they've taken inspiration from Sun as well, of course.
Yeah.
And to me, it sounds like Earth as well, and other musicians of that ilk. Yeah, just talking about the guitar sound, it's using an electroharmonic superego to freeze the drone note and various distortion pedals. I really wouldn't be surprised if there's like a big muff in there. Electroharmonics do really great effects pedals that are perfect for this sort of sound. Recorded in GarageBand, recorded on an iPad in GarageBand, and shockingly good to say that it's recorded on an iPad. Yeah,
absolutely. You wouldn't know at all. I've managed to get some reasonably decent sounds out of GarageBand, but yeah, I mean you're dealing with a limited pool of things, but yeah, what they've achieved is really effective for that.
Yeah. I guess it works because a lot of it is being done out of the box.
Absolutely, yeah.
So those effects are all already there before it goes into GarageBand. one thing I would say about this, I'd be so happy for it to be about 3 times the length. You know, this is the sort of song I want to put on and just lie down and just sort of lose myself in. I'd be more than happy for just to be consumed by this for like 15 minutes. But...
Yeah, it is that sort of style, isn't it? You can imagine. It's the kind of thing that you're, when you go to gigs and you see this type of music, that it's not like, it's no longer about like songs as such. It's about like, it's just about an atmosphere, and it's about just an evolving soundscape, really.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's interesting because it's often prioritizing the texture. Over other things. So the challenge then is, how do you keep a structure, and how do you, like we were saying about my version, how do you still tell a story? But using the source material of a folk tune is probably a very good way to start along that
Totally.
path.
There's some nice little, what it really does as well is you get those little moments of like little sort of semitone clashes and things like that. Which, I think because everything else is quite simple and sparse, those really hit you when they come. Okay, so Pomegranate Jones.
Yeah, right. I mean, this is music to drown in, right?
Right, yeah. So what my first observation with this one, compared, because they sent in one last episode as well.
Yeah.
My first observation is what they managed to do really well is basically just to throw so much sound in there to get it right to the threshold.
Yeah.
Of too much without quite crossing it.
Yeah.
And it's really playing that line the whole way through. So it's a really intense listen.
Absolutely.
So last time there was a bit of a sort of, they were going with a sort of almost pastoral theme. This one's much more sort of straightforward guitars and drums and drones. And yeah, I mean, I love it for what it is.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of, and I thought I heard some of this in the last one, but actually it's even more distinct here, is this sort of distorted sound, which I think actually maybe, now we've talked about your version, is it a bit reduction sort of effect or something like that?
Could well be, yeah.
Because my assumption was it was being sort of, it just sounds like it's being blown out of the speakers. But I think maybe it's some bit reduction, so you get a crispness even on the bass instruments. You get this crisp packet sort of feeling. And yeah, music to drown in. What's the comment here? So we should say this is a bit of a collaboration.
Yeah.
There's a couple of other musicians on this track, but they said, some guitar to suit the lyrics in some way, seeing as it's about Jesus drowning people, so kind of heavy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it really is like, and I think that bit reduction means that you've got, it's like waves crashing over you, but it really feels like suffocating. I mean, similar to the catapholc version in a way, in that like I would just lie down and sort of lose myself.
Yeah.
But then the percussion is like beating you, and like the waves crashing over you. It's a little bit more, claustrophobic.
It's interesting because they say that, they say there's something super naive about these kinds of medieval reframings of the Bible. So they say they've tried to incorporate a bit of that into the intro and into the percussion.
Yeah,
which it's interesting. I'm always interested by people taking ideas and concepts and trying to translate that musically.
Yeah, really nice guitar sound at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's like a bit Richard Dawson-y, like slightly distorted again. I think that's the thing, is Pomegranate Jones sits on the edge of distortion, where it's just a little bit breaking a lot of the time.
Yeah, but it's a cool sound.
Really good, yeah.
Yeah.
And great artwork again.
Yes. Yeah.
Come out with a fantastic piece of artwork.
Yeah, almost sort of medieval Life of Pablo.
Yeah, it is, yeah. Okay, Cerys Hafana.
Yeah. This is a really cool track. In generally quite an electronic music field, this stands out to me as a like a fully acoustic, layered acoustic take.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear this recreated live.
Yeah, a lot of this was created just on a loop pedal, so it's completely conceivable that it could be performed live and retain a lot of what's going on here, which is great.
So Cerys is a harpist, among other things, and so a lot of this features around the harp. So she's got a kind of harp pattern going, and then she's also got some percussion from hitting a harp with actual bits of willow.
Right, yeah,
which is a really nice touch. But she's really gone to town on that sort of ethereal vibe. She's given it a 6/8 feel.
Yeah.
As well. So it's got a real sort of the kind of jaunt to it. The real high point for me is when it cuts to just vocals.
Yeah. Mary mild, call home your child is the lyric, and you just get sort of three or four harmonies which just sing that line, and it stops. All the music stops very abruptly. It's like whoa. And another point is when the cello comes in, and you get that first bam. Yes. Which is just great. Because not loads of low frequencies in here, but when you get it, it's really, really good, really well thought out.
Yeah, there's so much in here.
There's so much to talk about in this one. Because the cello as well, you get that bam, and then you dun 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 call and response between those two instruments. It's not clouded. It's really well thought out.
Yeah, and there's that sort of really metallic sounding kind of counter melody on the. Is it a mini piano, she said?
Don't know.
I think it might be a mini piano. But yeah, just a really metallic sound. So there's a lot of woody sounds, a lot of metallic sounds. It's really earthy.
Yeah, brilliant. Here's one of the things I really like about it. Fundamentally, she's kept the melody the same, but she's changed the key. So that the melody is in G major, arguably, but all the harmony around it is in A Dorian. And what that means is that the melody ends on the 7th note of the scale, which is just so unusual, where usually it would be on the first, the tonic. In this, it's just like... it just gives it a completely different sound. In a way, it's such a simple touch, but it's so clever. I mean, I think, we've all gone to town, like, really changing it, but she just made a simple tweak, and it's really, like, brought whole new life to the song.
Yeah. Artwork, again, I really like the approach to this. It's that sort of, again, almost kind of collage thing. There's a photo of her sat in front of a plastic football goal, holding a ball with a sort of hooded kind of cloak on, just the bitter withy, and then just a twig laid over it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really nice touch as well.
I really hope she'll be involved in later episodes as well. I think this is amazing. It's really unique, and I just love it. Now, one thing about this track is it's, as far as I can tell, it's totally mono.
Right.
I would like to hear, it's not on criticism because I'm blown away by this track, but I would really like to hear her experiment a bit more with the stereo field and, these vocal harmonies, which change throughout as well. She's not just doing the same thing for every verse. You sort of get different harmonies throughout the track. Could we spread them out a little bit? Could we have some of those counter melodies out in the sides of the stereo field? That's where I'd like to see Cerys go.
Great.
So our Saviour made the bridge of the beams of the sun, and over the sea went he. And these three jolly lordlings followed, and they were drowned all three. So up Lincoln and down Lincoln, and others they did call, saying, Mary, mild, call home your child, for ours are drowned.
Okay, so we've got another version from John Don Paiva.
Yeah, great. John sent in a version of The Cruel Mother for last episode, but it was just slightly too late for us to be able to include it in the episode. If you enjoy this version of the Bitter Withy, go back to the playlist, for the last playlist, and that's there.
Yeah, what I really like about what John is doing is he's taking a sort of slightly lateral approach to the lyrics. He's really thinking about the content of the song, of the words of the song, and then kind of going off in a different direction with it.
Yeah, thinking about the story he wants to tell.
Yeah, so he's called it "That's My Boy."
Yeah,
and he's taken it. It's almost like seeing the kind of the latter end of the Jesus story, the crucifixion, and tying it into this story. So it's almost like it's a written from the mother's perspective.
Yeah. Let me read what he said about that.
Yeah, go for it.
He says, The image of Mother Mary happily beating her son was just a weird one for me. I tried to consolidate this version of Mary with the one I'm more familiar with. My section is like the sequel to this song. From Mary's perspective on the day of Christ's crucifixion, it's meant to communicate her pride in him being able to withstand the punishment and kind of validates her beating him as a form of training or practice for this day. Really interesting.
Yeah. Of all the versions we've got, including our own, he's the one who's really gone and like thought about the story and the concept behind it, and
which is the same as with his version of Cruel Mother.
Yeah.
Again, like actually he was the one who best addressed last time all of our sort of worries about how to approach dealing with this woman. If you go and listen to that song, he's really addressed a lot of those worries that we had. So interestingly, the intro uses some sampled vocals. He's taken that from the version recorded by the band The Bitter Withy. So taking source material in a different way.
Yeah, I think one of the things. So I really love the intro. I almost worried. You know, the thing we were talking about with your tune, where you kind of gone for this very deliberate start. It starts off as one type of tune, and then changes into a very different type of tune. And then after a few repeated listens, I feel like I'm with it now.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think initially I was really drawn to that first bit, and I think that the second half is quite sparse in comparison. So I'd love to hear the instrumentation developed in the second half, and maybe bringing back some of that from the first half. But that's just my preference.
I love the "That's My Boy" refrain at the end.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? Really strong.
Yeah, yeah, and unexpected layering at like. That's my boy, you know, they're overlapping. It's great.
Yeah. No, you managed to create quite a good pop tune out of it.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Although probably from the intro you wouldn't get that until you get to the final hook.
Yeah, but there's a hook, you know.
Yeah, there is a hook. Yeah,
it's good.
That's definitely something that's going to get stuck in my head.
Yeah, for sure.
Crown of thorns upon your head, bloody path that you must tread. Thankful now that you played the game. 3 lashes helped you shoulder the pain. That's my boy, a fighter till the end.
So we got a version here by Captain Skiffle. Unfortunately, Captain Skiffle doesn't have a SoundCloud account, so it's not in the playlist, but we'll play a little clip when we've finished talking about this. Captain Skiffle is part of a band called the Bottle Top Boogie Band. I know they've got a live performance coming up online soon, so if you want to track them down and hear some of their music, that's the way to do it. Bottle Top Boogie Band in Facebook. I'm sure you'll find it. So, what do we think of this?
Yeah, it's cool, isn't it?
It's a thrash through.
It's a cool track. I think the thing that stands out to me most really is the harmonica. The harmonica playing is so nice.
Yeah.
So good.
This is all recorded on his phone and then put into Audacity on the computer.
Right. and it's a recording that's much greater than the sum of its parts for it, I think. Yeah. But yeah, it's the harmonica really stands out. What he's done with the melody and the tune, it's not completely dissimilar.
Yeah.
But it is a different tune, and it's a minor key.
Yeah. So he said here that he's based it on the kerfuffle version.
Right.
There's some notes here which I want to read out because they sort of sum up a lot of my philosophy about folk music as well. He says, these days we think of folk music as a specific genre, but folk music really just means music of the people, and that's exactly what skiffle is.
Right.
So this is a sort of skiffle version, Captain Skiffle, obviously.
Yeah.
Raw, unvarnished, and played on cheap instruments by people with little or no formal training. So this version doesn't have anything much in the way of composition or arrangement. Like old folk tales, it just rattles through the story with a minimum of fuss.
There you go.
And he's cut a lot of verses out.
Yeah.
It's only about 2 minutes long, so a lot of the verses are missing, but the story still is there.
Yeah.
You know, similarly to what a lot of us have tried to do, just try and cut down these old songs that go on for about 10 minutes if you do all the verses.
But then, because it's 2 minutes, but he's found time for several harmonica interludes.
Yeah.
And like you say, the story, you get all of that.
Yeah, it's got that thing that always reminds me of. I first noticed it on John Lee Hooker tracks, where he'll finish a verse and then just sort of carry on that chord a bit before he starts on the next verse. And there's not any sort of strict, here's the end of the verse and then we got 4 bars and we're going into the next verse. It's just, we'll hang around here for a bit.
Yeah.
And then, we're off again.
Yeah. Just when it feels right.
John Lee Hooker did that all the time. There's some great tracks where he's playing with session musicians, and the session musicians do this fill because they're expecting it to go into the next part, and it just doesn't. Yeah, completely confused. It's funny.
I think that's what it's like playing in a live setting with me sometimes.
Yeah, well, I know I used to do it in my skiffle band as well. He's saying the harmonica, the guitar's playing in A minor, so he's using a G harmonica, played in 3rd position, which is apparently usually for blues, but it works for this. I never understand harmonica keys.
No idea.
Sometimes you want it in the same key as the guitar, and sometimes not. I don't know why. There you go. Sounds great anyway. Yeah.
Fetch home her child, laid him across her knee, and with a bunch of withy twigs she gave him lashes 3. She gave him lashes 3.
Okay, we've had a very last minute version by Rob Semp. We literally had it sent in as we were recording this conversation. It sounds cool though. I think it sounds really cool.
Yeah, he's channeling the sort of Drake, Frank Ocean vibe there, like
Yeah.
low key instrumental backing with vocals there.
Creative use of auto-tune, which I always love.
Yeah, and like sitting quite low in the mix. But I mean, what's interesting in terms of his interpretation is he's sort of translated this tune into from the street suburb gangland setting.
Yeah, totally. I like the men in suits. The rich boys are now the men in suits.
Right,
which
yeah.
That's cool, yeah.
But then instead of just straight killing him there, he goes back and gets a gang.
Right, yeah.
So interesting. And interesting, he's called it Bitter Withy.
Yeah.
Which is a nice little play on words for you there.
I wonder if that means anything. We haven't had time to get any comments.
No, we haven't. So this is really just a first listen. Here you go. We're flying by the seat of our pants here.
Do you recognise the sample?
I don't.
It's the intro of the kerfuffle version.
Is it?
It's literally about the first few bars of the kerfuffle version, which he's sort of taken from YouTube, detected the tempo, and then put drum beats and some of his own synths to it.
Right, there you go. Yeah, it sounds really nice. I'm really into it.
Yeah, it is really laid back, really nice. I'd definitely put this on. Anyway, it's a complete reworking, different story. I do like the vibe, though.
Yeah.
I know that he was thinking of the San Andreas soundtrack when he was
Right.
working
Oh,
on
that
it.
explains a lot. Yeah.
I tell you what, there's a synth actually that I really like in it, and actually it's very similar to the synth that I've used. It's a classic technique, I guess, in this sort of music, but other sorts of music as well, where the synth, when it hits the chord, it pitch bends up
Right,
from
yeah.
whether it's an octave below or a few semitones below.
Yeah. No, it's nice.
You get this steady brightening of it as the pitch bends up.
Yeah.
Which, if you listen closely, there's one of those in my track as well, although it's quite buried at this point.
Friends, not just one, not just three, but about 16. They brought baseballs, they brought bats, they brought gloves, and they had themselves some fun. The 3 men too busy with each other, talking business, never saw them come. Another day, another dollar, another day.
A huge thanks to everyone who submitted a track for this episode. We're really blown away by the response, and we can't wait to hear more takes in future episodes.
So, for next month's tune, you've chosen Edward, otherwise known as My Son David. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. So it's funny that we've called it Edward
We
on the
have.
thing, and I think that's because it's on the Mainly Norfolk site that we use quite a lot to just kind of do background on these. That it's listed there as the main title for it. And as I understand it, Edward is more commonly used in England, whereas My Son David is more of a Scottish American thing, I think.
It's funny because Edward just isn't mentioned in the song.
It picks up on this in someone's comments on that site. It picks up on that it's a slightly deceptive name. Yeah, I don't really know what to make of that, other than I've just always thought of it as My Son David, and the versions that I've heard when I was getting introduced to it were all My Son David. So it's one that I first heard from the Furrow Collective again.
Yeah, you're only choosing songs by the Furrow Collective.
Only by the Furrow. But the thing is, that in between them all, they've done all of the songs more or less.
This is old Furrow Collective fresh takes.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, again, their version of this is really nice. So what drew me to this one is that it's the simplicity and the economy of it. That it's such a simple tune. It's a really simple story and format. You kind of get sucked into it, but then with this sort of rising horror that something's awry.
Yeah.
I'll tell the story. So a lad comes home. The first thing we hear is his mother saying, "What's this blood on your sword or on your shirt?" And the lad goes, "Oh, it's my greyhound.
Yeah.
Killed my greyhound." And she says, "Right, okay, but greyhound's blood, bit thicker than that."
Yeah, it's funny that she knows like all about the blood of these different animals.
Well, it's a different time, isn't it? There was just blood everywhere, so you just got to know it.
They just slaughtered animals a lot.
Yeah. Because the next thing he says is, "Oh, okay, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean greyhound. I meant I've done a lot of slaying today. It was my horse, my grey mare."
Yeah.
She says, "Well, it's quite thin for a horse's blood, isn't it?" So, and then she basically, you get the sense that she knows there's something else going on and that he's not telling. And then he finally admits, yes, it's the blood of my brother, John.
Right, yeah.
And this is so characteristic of folk, is this sort of slightly impassive quality to people's reactions that she doesn't really respond to that. Her response is certainly in the versions that we've been using is, "Well, where are you going then? I assume you're off." And he says, "Yeah, I'm going to run away and hopefully never come back."
Yeah.
It's quite a nice way he describes it in the version we've got in the notes. It's "When will you return again? When the sun and the moon meet in the glen, and I hope that will never be."
Yeah.
I think that's a really nice little phrase.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think what I just thought of the type of stuff that I'm really hoping to really internalize. This pretty much epitomizes it. It's funny. Francis Child, the famous collector of folk songs, he allegedly held this one in particularly high esteem. Apparently, he said that it's been regarded as one of the most noblest and most sterling specimens of the popular ballad. So,
oh right, okay.
There you go. So we're onto something good. And it's particularly popular in America and Scotland, and but they reckon it may well have sort of Scandinavian roots.
Okay.
Which is interesting. So I'd love to actually go back and do a comparison of if we can find some people doing interpretations of that in Scandinavian folk, just to see how that.
Yeah, maybe that'll come up over the next month. Fingers crossed. I'd like to.
Yeah, to explore that. Yeah. So that's what drew me to it anyway.
Yeah. So the thing that I think I like that word you're using, the economy of it. The tune for me, it's one of those songs similar for me to Down to the River to Pray, which everyone should know. It's one of those tunes you hear it and you're like, oh, of course. That's one of those sort of archetypal tunes that you know as soon as you've heard it, you know it, and you can sing it back. And that's lovely, because it means you've got so many options then of what to do with it, because it's so sort of self-explanatory, it's self-contained. And I mean, I think it's funny because you could almost hear it sung like from the melody alone, you could hear it sung as a lullaby, and then the lyrics, maybe not.
Well, I mean, we heard that story in the Cruel Mother of someone who would sing that to their child, and that's a song about killing children. So there's what we would constitute a lullaby is quite cleaned up, I think. Why not? I think fair game.
Yeah.
Do you want me to play it?
Yes, absolutely.
Great. So,
what's the blood upon your coat, my son David? Oh, son David, what is the blood upon your coat? Come, promise you'll tell me true.
So that's the gist of it.
It's just lovely. I just think it's really nice.
Oh, yeah. I'm almost remiss to actually do too much to it, but I thought because of the simplicity of it, there's some scope to get some really, to do some really beautiful things with it, I think.
One of the things I love when you go to a folk club is when someone just sings a song unaccompanied. Yeah. And it doesn't have to have loads of harmonies on it. It's just someone delivering this song, and it's exactly the sort of song that would work in that context.
For sure. I mean, I'm probably going to go for something denser than that. But you know, I do really want to have a go at that. But
What's this other song then?
there's actually another slightly different song which I'll also play a bit of, which I think is probably worth mentioning. It's called "What Put the Blood Upon Your Right Shoulder, Son," and it's very much the same song. It's a different tune,
Right.
But it's pretty much the same story. But there's some kind of key differences which I'll go into in a sec. What put the blood on your right shoulder, son? Son, come tell it unto me. Well, it is the blood of my grey mare that I killed most manfully. That I killed most manfully.
Nice.
So different vibe.
Yeah.
But a very similar tune. The difference is when you listen to the whole song, the emphasis on My Son David is this story that kind of built this gradual building to a thing that you've probably already worked out
Right.
a few verses before. In What Put the Blood, you basically learn the story in the second verse.
Right.
He gets to it quite quickly. I think it's much quicker reveal. It's less of an exchange. But what then happens is the mother then says, right, well, what are you going to do about your kids? What are you going to do about your houses? What are you going to do about all these things? And he basically, the guy's like, yeah, I'm just going to sell it all. Just going to leave it with someone else, And so I find that from a narrative point, it's less satisfying for me.
Right.
But I think the tune is actually really nice. And there's some really nice arrangements of it. Alistair Roberts on his own, not with the Furrow Collective. Right. One that does a really good one. Although Emily Portman's on that record. I'm obsessed, quietly obsessed.
Yeah.
But there are lots of other versions that are really nice. The Lankum version actually is really beautiful. Lankum, it's a more of a kind of harmonized arrangement of it.
Okay. Yeah. We'll share links to all these songs over the coming week or so.
So what I'd say when people are going away and thinking about this is definitely listen to both versions, see what you feel like, see which one you're drawn to most, come up with something. You could come up with a hybrid, up to you really.
Yeah. I mean, like I say, I think there's just huge potential for going off in lots of different, because it works so well by itself, there's huge potential for going off in different directions. So I think there'll be some really interesting responses to this. Thanks for listening. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Old Tunes Fresh Takes. Just a reminder, if you want to take part and learn Edward along with us, go and check out our Facebook, Twitter or SoundCloud pages. There you'll find everything you need to get started, including scores, chord sheets and lyrics. Links to these pages can be found in the description of this episode.
Our next episode will be out on the 15th of June. If you'd like to be included in the podcast, then try and get your version to us by Monday, 8th of June. That's Monday, 8th of June to get your versions included in the podcast. If you can't manage that date, then please do send your recordings whenever you can, as we'll be continuing to share them across our social media pages.
We always reply to messages and are really keen to make it as easy as possible for you to submit. So whatever stage you're at, get in touch and we'll be happy to provide feedback and advice.
Once again, this is for absolutely everyone to take part, regardless of your ability or musical style. We're really looking forward to hearing your fresh takes.